At 7:42 p.m., my phone buzzed with a group message titled, "Family." Dad wrote, "We think it's best if you take a step back for now. Megan needs space." Then Aunt Carol reacted with a thumbs up. Just like that, I was voted out of my own bloodline. I stared at the screen curry spinning in the microwave, realizing they'd just ended 5 years of my life with perfect grammar. So I typed, "Understood. I'll respect that and step away from the family fun too." I pressed send. 5 minutes later, the first phone call came in, and by midnight, nothing in that family's life was still working. People always called me the steady one, the dependable daughter, the one who had it together. I used to think that was a compliment. Turns out it was just another way to say you'll clean up our mess. 5 years ago, on a night that still smells like wet asphalt and panic, my dad called me from a Walgreens parking lot. It was raining so hard I could hear it through the phone, a hollow drumming against his windshield. His voice cracked. "Skyler, they won't admit Megan without insurance. She's not going to make it. Please." I was 27, sitting in my tiny apartment, still believing that love meant saying yes. I opened my laptop, logged into my savings account, and drained every cent I'd been saving for a down payment. $32,000 vanished in a blink. Megan was admitted the next morning. My parents called it a miracle. No one mentioned my name. That moment rewired something in me. After she got out, every crisis had my number written on it. Mom's insulin, Dad's overdrafts, Megan's therapy bills. I told myself it was fine. I was helping. Family helps, but help turned into habit, and habit turned into expectation. Then one night over takeout, Dad said, "Maybe we should make it official, set up a family fund. You're so good with numbers." I smiled because it sounded responsible. Safe. Like control. What I built was a leash. The Kenyon Family Fund lived under my name, my account, my routing, my reminders. It paid everything. Prescriptions, mortgages, tires, even small emergencies like Aunt Carol's dental crown. Every month I logged in, checked balances, shifted money, and told myself it was temporary. I watched their lives run smoothly because I kept every wheel greased. Adrian, my boyfriend, would joke, "You treat your family like clients who never pay their invoices." I'd laugh, but in the shower later I'd cry quietly so he wouldn't hear. By year 3, I stopped buying anything new for myself. I canceled Netflix, skipped vacations, ate oatmeal because it was cheap and didn't expire fast. Every time I tried to pull back, another emergency hit. It felt like the universe punished me for trying to breathe. Then came the retreat request, Megan asking the fund to cover a $3,200 yoga trip. "It's for my mental health," she said. I waited for someone else to say no. Instead, Dad replied, "That's important. Mental health counts too." Mom added a heart emoji. I sat there staring at my phone, realizing that they no longer saw the fund as help, it was theirs. My money was their right, and I was the rude one for hesitating. That's when the first small rebellion happened. I renamed the fund file on my computer. It used to be Kenyon Family Heart, XLSX. I changed it to Kenyon Ledger because that's what it really was, a record of debts that would never be repaid. Still, I kept going. Out of duty, out of habit, out of fear that if I stopped, everything would collapse. And then one afternoon, my dad called while I was at work. His tone was soft, almost rehearsed. "Sweetheart, maybe you should take a step back for a while. You've been tense lately." That phrase, "take a step back," stuck to the back of my throat like smoke. I didn't know it then, but those exact words would show up again 5 years later in a group message that would end everything. After that call, things started to shift in quiet, ugly ways. The messages came faster, the tone softer but heavier. "Just until Friday. Can you cover Mom's refill this month? It's only temporary." Every request felt rehearsed, like a script they'd practiced together. Then came the one that broke the rhythm. Megan texted, "Could the fund cover a yoga retreat in Arizona? It's for my mental health." I waited. Maybe someone else would step up. Dad replied first, "That's important. Mental health counts too." Mom added a heart emoji. That was it. Decision made. My silence was their consent. That night, I sat in front of my laptop looking at the fund account like it was a living thing. The balance blinked back at me, smaller than it should have been. There were new withdrawals dates. I didn't recognize stores I hadn't approved. A patio heater gas charges something labeled retreat deposit. I took a screenshot. My hand didn't even shake. The next morning, Dad called, pretending calm. "Hey, Rubes. Sorry, Skyler. Did you see Megan's message? We were thinking maybe the fund could cover half." "Half?" As if I were a committee. I said quietly, "Dad, the fund was for emergencies." He chuckled like I was being dramatic. "Mental health is an emergency. Then maybe she should talk to a therapist, not a travel agent." The line went cold. That's when he sighed, the same disappointed father sigh that folds you back into being 12. "You've changed, Skyler." He was right. I had. A few days later, I got the official calendar invite family check-in call Thursday, 8:00 p.m. The subject line had a smiley face. I joined out of politeness, still believing maybe they just wanted to talk. Within 5 minutes, Megan hijacked the call. "I just think Skyler's energy has been really toxic lately. It's not just about the money, it's the attitude." I sat frozen. Mom chimed in, gentle but cutting. "Sweetheart, maybe just listen first," Dad added. "We're only saying this because we care." I forced a smile. "I've been listening for years. I paid for you all to keep talking. Tonight I'd like to finish a sentence." Silence. Then Dad said it, the same phrase from that phone call months ago. "Maybe you should take a step back. Give everyone some space." There it was, the exact script delivered again, but this time rehearsed by all of them. I smiled faintly. "Okay, I'll do exactly that." They didn't know what those words meant coming from me. They thought I'd sulk, maybe send flowers later. Instead, I opened my laptop that night, renamed the fund folder again, and whispered, "You wanted space. You're about to have plenty." That night, while the city exhaled outside my window, I sat at my desk and opened the Kenyan ledger. Rows of transactions glowed against the dark rent, co-pays, prescriptions, car repairs. I stared at the numbers until they blurred into years. Then I started deleting. Auto pay off, transfer canceled, utility payment paused. Each click felt surgical, like cutting oxygen lines one by one. I downloaded the final statement and saved it to a new folder, Kenyan Ledger. Final. The name felt right. 5 years of lifelines reduced to clean rows and digital proof. When the last toggle turned gray, the quiet in my apartment changed. It wasn't peaceful yet, more like the silence before an alarm. I poured coffee, sat back, and whispered, "You wanted space. I'm giving you distance." At 3:11 a.m., my phone started buzzing. Once, twice, then continuously until the light strobed across the ceiling. 12 missed calls, 20, 30, 89 by sunrise. Dad's voicemail came first. The bank flagged everything. "What happened? Are you okay?" Then Mom, "Sweetheart, this isn't what we meant. I need my prescriptions. Please call." Then Megan, sharp and trembling, "You're cruel. You know I needed that payment. You've always been jealous." Jealous. Of what? Their dependence. Their chaos. I didn't reply. I watched the notifications pile up like snow. When the phone finally stilled, I exhaled. The silence didn't hurt. It hummed. At 8:00 a.m., Adrian called. "So, space, huh?" I laughed for the first time in weeks. "Turns out it includes my bank login." He hesitated. "You want me to come over?" I thought for a moment, then asked, "Didn't your ex Mara move into bank compliance?" He blinked. "Yeah, why?" "No reason," I said, "just curious." That was my first step from emotional defense to tactical offense. By noon, Dad texted again, "We can fix this, just turn the automatic things back on." Aunt Carol chimed in, "Families need grace." Grace to them meant my money. I closed my laptop and said softly, "Grace doesn't pay overdraft fees." That afternoon, the pharmacy called to confirm a declined card. "Would you like to update your payment method?" the pharmacist asked gently. "No," I said. "They'll handle it." "Are they okay?" she asked. I smiled. "They will be. Eventually." I wasn't angry anymore. I was documenting. Because when people think they're entitled to your kindness, the only way to prove you're done is paperwork. By Sunday evening, I'd stopped counting the calls. My phone looked like a crime scene of missed connections, Dad's number flashing between urgent and angry Mom's voicemails, bleeding into guilt, Megan's texts swinging between tears and rage. Then a new one appeared, Family Zoom, 7:00 p.m. The subject line read, Casual check-in. Casual. Right. At 6:59, I sat at my desk wearing a soft black sweater, the same one I'd worn when I first created the family fund years ago. There was symmetry in that. My hair was tied back, my voice steady. The Kenyon Ledger folder sat open beside my laptop like a quiet witness. I clicked, Join Meeting. Faces bloomed across the screen, each one familiar, each one pretending not to be cornered. Mom looked tense. Hands clasped so tightly the knuckles whitened. Dad paced behind her, jaw set. Megan's eyes were already red, though I doubted from crying. Aunt Carol sat centered in her frame, pearls gleaming, the self-appointed judge of the family court. Cousin Emily, ever the peacemaker, smiled too brightly. Hi, everyone. Let's all just keep this civil. Okay, of course, I said. I'd hate to interrupt anyone's civility. Dad leaned in. You didn't have to cancel the fund, Skyler. You could have just talked to us. I smiled calm. I didn't cancel it, Dad. I closed it. It was in my name, my routing number, my liability. Mom's voice trembled. That money was keeping us alive. No, I said softly. I was. Aunt Carol sighed dramatically. Families go through rough patches, dear. You don't just turn off love. I met her eyes. You're right. I turned off autopay. For a second, no one breathed. Megan slammed forward. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Watching us struggle. You made everything about control. I tilted my head. I made it about accountability. Dad crossed his arms. We trusted you. That was my cue. I reached for the mouse and clicked Share Screen. The spreadsheet filled the display rows of color-coded cells, years of payments dates and notes. At the top, bold black letters read Kenyon Ledger XLSX. Mom gasped. What is this? 5 years, I said evenly. Every bill, every copay, every emergency you called love. Lines of data scrolled down like confessions. Rent for Megan's apartment, insulin refills, tires, therapy, mortgage gaps. A dental crown for Aunt Carol. Beside each entry, the totals stacked into one brutal truth. $187,421,000, Emily whispered. Wow. Aunt Carol's smile tightened. Someone loves keeping receipts. I looked straight at her. Someone had to. Otherwise, you'd still call me dramatic instead of accurate. Mom covered her mouth. You tracked all this, I nodded. No one else was keeping score, and I was tired of gaslighting myself. Dad's face went pale. You didn't have to humiliate us. I didn't, I said quietly. I protected us until you made it clear I was the only one who had to. The silence grew so dense it hummed. I clicked to the next tab, another spreadsheet smaller labeled What If. Adrian had helped me build it. The totals showed what I could have saved if I hadn't been their safety net. A modest home, a retirement start, a life. Megan's voice broke through. You think money makes you better than us? No, I said, but it's the only thing you ever came to me for. A flicker of movement caught my eye, Dad's phone lighting up beside him. He was texting, probably trying to coordinate damage control. I scrolled again and pulled up a PDF. Before you decide who's cruel, you might want to see this. The document filled the screen. Kenyon Family Wellness LLC loan application, $80,000. Filed under my name, my social security number, my forged signature. Mom froze. Dad stepped back like the light itself had burned him. This, I said, tapping the screen, was submitted 2 days after you asked me to take a step back. If I hadn't closed the fund, the bank would have released the money straight into a fake business you co-signed. Aunt Carol swallowed hard. That can't be right. Oh, it's right. Carmen at the bank confirmed it. I called her this morning. Megan's tears stopped instantly. You went to the bank, of course. Fraud tends to get their attention. Dad tried to recover. We were just trying to find a way to help Megan. I looked at him almost gently. No, you were trying to help yourselves. You taught her that rescue was my job. But the job's over. I reached beside me, lifting a neat stack of papers into frame. I've already spoken to a lawyer. Every joint account authorization has been removed. Shared cards canceled. Utilities separated. I even notified the IRS. Mom's voice rose brittle and small. You wouldn't. I already did. For a beat, no one spoke. I could see it, the dawning horror of accountability. The moment a family that ran on dependency realized the faucet had truly shut off. Aunt Carol forced a brittle laugh. "You're so dramatic, Skyler. We'll talk when you've cooled down." I smiled faintly. "You don't understand. There won't be another conversation. Love without boundaries becomes debt, and I just paid mine in full." I ended share screen. The blank of the Zoom grid glared back, every face trapped in a different shade of denial. Dad's jaw clenched. "So what?" "You want us to beg?" "No," I said. "I want you to learn how to live without draining me." Then I took a breath, slow and calm. "You told me to step away." I did. And with one click, I hit leave meeting. The screen went black. My reflection appeared a woman I barely recognized. Not angry, not trembling, just free. I sat there staring at the dark monitor, listening to the hum of my refrigerator. It sounded like applause. Outside, the city glowed indifferent. Inside, the quiet finally belonged to me. For 5 years, I'd been financing their peace. Tonight, I bought mine. For 2 days after that call, my apartment felt like the eye of a storm. The phone barely stopped buzzing. Dad's messages swung from fury to desperation. "Please fix this before we lose the house." Mom's voicemails trembled with guilt. "You've gone too far, sweetheart." And Megan's texts came in all caps, "You ruined us." I didn't answer any of them. I just let the notifications pile up until the sound became background noise, like rain on a roof I no longer lived under. On the third morning, the buzzing stopped. The silence was thick and strange, but it didn't hurt. It hummed. I went through every account one last time, verifying that all joint authorizations were gone. My name clean. No shared cards, no hidden logins. For the first time in years, my finances looked exactly like my life, mine alone. Then the email came. From the bank, suspicious business loan application, Kenyan Family Wellness LLC frozen pending investigation. Carmen had kept her promise. The loan had been officially blocked. If I'd hesitated even a day, I would have been $80,000 in debt for a business that didn't exist. That night, Adrian came over with takeout. He didn't ask for details. He just sat beside me and said, "Proud of you." That word proud broke something open inside me. It was the first time I'd ever heard it without strings attached. A week later, I got a call from Uncle Ray, the family's black sheep, the one they'd written off years ago. His voice was gravelly but kind. "I heard what happened," he said. "You're not the first, Skyler, just the first who shut the faucet off." I laughed through tears. "You mean they did this before?" "Not the loan part," he said, "but they bled me dry in the 90s. I moved states to survive it. Every generation has one who breaks the pattern. Looks like it's you." When we hung up, I cried for a long time, not from sadness, but relief. Someone finally understood. For the first time in years, I slept through the night. No buzzing phone, no overdrafts, no guilt. Just quiet, the kind you earn. A year has passed since that night. My life is small now, peacefully so. I rent a modest apartment with creaky floors that sing when I walk barefoot. I cook dinner with Adrian instead of ordering takeout, and when I check my bank app, there are no surprise withdrawals, no panic. Just calm numbers that belong to me. Last Christmas, Mom emailed a photo of the family by the tree gifts, unopened smiles forced. The subject line said, "Family still means something." I didn't reply. Coming home would mean giving them the keys to everything I rebuilt. Now, when I scroll back to that group chat, the one with Aunt Carol's little thumbs up, I don't feel anger. I feel proof. Boundaries aren't revenge. They're instructions for how to love me correctly or not at all. If you've ever had to draw that line, you're not alone. Share your story below.
My name is Crystal Howard. I'm 32 years old, and for most of my adult life, I've been the kind of woman people describe as stable. The one with the good job, the color-coded budget, the automatic savings transfers, the calm voice that smooths over other people's chaos. Liam used to say that's what he loved about me, my calm, my predictability. Later, I realized he meant it like a diagnosis. That evening started like hundreds before it. I was finishing a quarterly report for one of my firm's clients, cross-checking numbers, every column precise. The apartment around me glowed with warm, expensive light, the kind of comfort you can only buy when you're the one paying every bill. The rent, the utilities, the sleek furniture, all mine. Liam always said he'd contribute when his startup takes off. That line became a kind of lullaby I stopped hearing after the third year. I shut my laptop and stretched. The kitchen counter was crowded with grocery bags, wildflower honey, oat milk, imported cheese. All his favorites. It struck me then I couldn't remember the last time I'd bought something just because I wanted it. When I turned towards the dining area, I saw it. A black leather jacket casually draped over the back of the white velvet chair I'd saved 3 months to buy. It wasn't mine. The smell reached me first. Heavy perfume, the kind meant to announce its owner before she enters the room. It was sharp, sweet, predatory. My first thought wasn't jealousy. It was calculation. The chair had been empty when I left for work that morning. Liam had stayed home to work on investor calls. The jacket hadn't magically appeared. The front door clicked open. Liam walked in. Phone in hand, a paper bag from some trendy cafe hanging from his wrist. His hair was tousled too perfectly. Tousled. And he looked up only long enough to flash that effortless grin that used to make me forgive everything. "Hey, babe, did you pay the water bill?" They sent some reminder about updating the card info. My hand tightened around the edge of the counter. Yes, it's done. He kissed the air near my cheek, already scrolling through his messages. Good. Oh, and can you make sure the joint account has enough for my photography class fee tomorrow? They don't take late payments. The words barely registered. My focus stayed on the jacket. Whose is that? I asked. He glanced up, following my gaze. His eyes flicked from the jacket to me, then back to his phone. Oh, that. It's Ava's. He said it like he was naming a neighbor's cat. Ava, his creative partner. The one who posted gym selfies tagged #Hustle Queen and commented under all his photos with fire emojis. She left it here after our brainstorming session, he added, casually pouring himself sparkling water like we were discussing weather. Brainstorming, I repeated. My voice was neutral. Last night. He nodded. Yeah, we worked late. You were at that corporate dinner, remember? I did remember sitting under crystal chandeliers while my phone buzzed with his texts about how soulless the corporate world was. I'd smiled through it like always. Now the room felt airless. I lifted the jacket, the leather cool and supple under my fingers. She stayed here. He leaned against this counter, crossing his arms, the posture of someone rehearsed in defensiveness. You're overreacting. She crashed on the couch, that's all. You know how artists are. We get into a flow. On our couch. He rolled his eyes. Crystal, you're making this weird. You and I, we have different needs. That sentence hung in the air like static. Different needs, I echoed. He exhaled as if explaining something simple to a stubborn child. You're incredible, okay? You're the rock. You keep everything running. But you don't exactly light fires. You don't make me feel alive anymore. I stared at him, the jacket still in my hand. So Ava makes you feel alive. He smiled, faintly relieved I'd said it for him. Exactly. She's passion. Your stability. Both are important. Important. He pushed off the counter and started pacing. Look, you're the beta. You keep the bills paid, the structure solid. That's your energy. But an alpha like Ava, she brings the chaos, the spark. It's a balance. I almost laughed. Did you just call me the beta? He grinned, as if proud of the metaphor. Don't take it the wrong way. It's just biology, Crystal. You're the foundation. She's the flame. Together it all works. It took me a second to realize he believed every word. He'd found some cheap online ideology to justify cheating a self-help vocabulary of alphas and betas, passion, and stability. And he thought saying it like a business model made it rational. I set the jacket down carefully, smoothing the leather flat. So let me get this straight, I said softly. I pay for the roof over your head, the food you eat, the phone you're holding, and you're telling me my role is to provide stability while you pursue passion with someone else. He nodded, relieved that I'd articulated it so neatly. Exactly. You get it. You're so logical, that's what I love about you. This isn't personal. It's about energy. There was a strange stillness inside me then, not anger, not heartbreak, something colder. I walked to the window. The city glittered below each light, steady, dependable. Just like me. When I turned back, my voice was even. You want to live in a world of dynamics? Fine. He blinked, unsure if it was agreement or threat. I took my keys from the counter. Let's test your theory. Let's see how your ecosystem survives without its foundation. Crystal. But I was already walking to the door. As it shut behind me, the sound was small, soft, definitive. The sound of a lock clicking into place, sealing something in. Inside that expensive, beautiful apartment, there was a jacket on a chair, a man holding a glass of sparkling water, and the first faint tremor of collapse. And I was already planning the shutdown. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even tell my friends. When people talk about heartbreak, they describe noise, shouting, sobbing, pleading. But what I felt that night was silence. Cold, measured silence. The kind that lives in data centers and operating rooms. I sat at my desk in the half-dark, the city lights spilling through the blinds like fractured code. My laptop hummed a familiar mechanical lullaby. On the screen glowed the spreadsheet that had once been our shared budget. Now it looked like a crime scene. Rent, utilities, streaming, subscriptions. Liam's online course fees. Every transaction had my name beside it. Every responsibility, every auto pay, every card link. I was the foundation, he'd said. He wasn't wrong. But he'd never stopped to think what would happen if the foundation walked away. So I began. Step 1. Financial extraction. I opened the joint account and transferred half of the balance, exactly half, to my personal savings. Not revenge, just fairness. Then, one by one, I disconnected every automatic draft connected to my name. The electricity, the Wi-Fi, the concierge service. Each confirmation email felt like a small exhale of freedom. Step 2. Digital erasure. I changed the passwords to my cloud accounts, canceled the shared Netflix, revoked his access to my Amazon Prime. The kind of invisible housekeeping that keeps a relationship alive gone in less than 15 minutes. Step 3. Disengagement. I logged into the property management portal and canceled the renewal for the lease I'd signed alone. My cursor hovered over the confirm termination button. I clicked it. Confirmation successful. It was almost elegant watching the world I built unravel in reverse order, one clean, logical sequence. I didn't pack right away. Instead, I sat back in my chair, the glow of the laptop washing over my hands. My fingers trembled, not from fear, but from clarity. For years, I'd been afraid that without me, Liam would collapse. But maybe collapse was what he needed. When the screen dimmed, I finally stood and crossed to the bedroom. It looked like a magazine spread, curated chaos. Designer pillows, abstract art, the faint scent of his cologne. I opened the closet. Half of it was filled with clothes I never wore, things he'd picked for me to match his aesthetic. Dresses with high slits, heels that hurt after 20 minutes. I touched the fabric, then let it go. None of it was mine, not really. I pulled out a single suitcase. Inside, I placed what mattered. My laptop, my passport and IDs. A worn leather notebook filled with years of budget scribbles. A small velvet box containing my grandmother's locket. A steady woman who survived 2 bankruptcies and 1 cheating husband without ever raising her voice. And finally, a hardbound copy of The Odyssey, my favorite story about a woman's quiet endurance while the men played at gods. That was all. I zipped the suitcase shut. The sound felt final, like a line of code completing its loop. The clock on the wall read 2:13 a.m. The apartment was silent, except for the hum of the fridge and the faint vibration of Liam's phone on the counter, another message from Ava, no doubt. A notification flashed on his screen. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. I smiled not bitterly, just knowingly. Tomorrow would be instructive. Before I left, I did one last thing. I sat at the kitchen counter, opened my email, and scheduled every service termination to take effect at 8 a.m., exactly 5 hours from now. Electricity, internet, gas, all in my name, all set to end. Then I stood in the doorway and looked around one last time. The apartment had been our dream-exposed brick-high ceilings, plants that somehow stayed alive under my care. But now it felt like a simulation, a set built to mimic domestic bliss. You called me the beta, I whispered to the empty room, but I was the architect. I switched off the light. When the door closed behind me, the click echoed through the hallway. Soft, certain. The elevator ride down was silent. My suitcase wheels rolled over the marble floor, each sound crisp and controlled. When the doors opened to the parking garage, the smell of cold concrete and engine oil hit me sharp grounding. I placed the suitcase in the trunk and slid into the driver's seat. For a moment, I just sat there, my hands on the steering wheel, breathing in the stillness. Then I started the engine. The headlights carved a path through the darkness. As I drove out of the garage, I glanced once at the building's reflection in my rearview mirror, tall, perfect, fragile. It would still be standing in the morning. but by nightfall, its lights would go out. And maybe then Liam would finally learn what happens when the foundation stops holding everything up. The first thing I noticed about freedom was the quiet. Not the hollow quiet of loneliness, the kind of quiet that hums with possibility. My new apartment was small, a single-room studio, near the river, the kind of place realtors call efficient. The furniture came with it, a bed, a table, a chair. That was enough. Every morning, I woke to sunlight instead of tension. I ran along the water before work, made coffee in silence, and logged into my laptop without anyone asking for money or attention. It was monastic, cleansing. Each breath felt like a system reboot. Still, I kept one connection to the old world, a burner phone. It sat on the nightstand, turned face down, a small, glowing relic of everything I'd left behind. I didn't want to call Liam, I just wanted to observe. Data collection, not emotion. It didn't take long. Day 3. The phone lit up with a new voicemail notification. I let it sit for hours before pressing play. Crystal, hey! The Wi-Fi's down. I think you forgot to pay the bill again. Can you fix it? I have an online coaching session tomorrow. His tone was casual, expectant, the voice of a man who believed gravity would always pull the same direction. I deleted it without a word. Day 5. Another notification. Another voicemail. This time, his tone had shifted. Crystal, what's going on? The power company says the account is closed. I came home and everything's blinking. I had to throw out all the food in the fridge. I have people coming over tomorrow. This isn't funny. People, meaning Ava. I imagined them fumbling in the dark phones, glowing like desperate fireflies. Delete. Day 7. The message came at 2 a.m. His voice was shaking. Crystal, I got a notice from the landlord. They said the rent wasn't paid and the lease isn't renewed. What did you do? You can't just abandon your responsibilities. This isn't how adults handle things. Call me back. Fix this. I sat on the edge of the bed, the moonlight slicing across the room. Fix this. For years, that was all I'd done. Fix, smooth, stabilize. Now he said the words like a prayer, and for the first time I realized how powerful they sounded when unanswered. I turned the phone over. The screen went black again. Silence reclaimed the room. The next morning, I met my reflection in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized her. Not because she'd changed, but because she finally looked unburdened. Later that week, while I was working on a new client proposal, my regular phone rang. The name on the screen stopped me mid-sentence. Maya, a mutual friend of ours. The kind of friend who had always taken Liam's charisma at face value. I hesitated, then answered. Hey, Crystal. Her voice was cautious, hesitant. Have you talked to Liam recently? My lips twitched. No. Why? There was a pause on the line, the sound of someone deciding how much truth to tell. It's a mess, she said finally. He's been kicked out of the apartment. The landlord changed the locks yesterday. Apparently the rent hadn't been paid for weeks. He's been crashing at Ava's, but... But what? Maya lowered her voice. Apparently Ava's in trouble. Big trouble. There was some fight, police got involved. She's been arrested for assault. Something about her business partner pressing charges. I blinked, letting that sink in. It wasn't satisfaction I felt. It was symmetry. Maya kept talking, her words spilling fast. He's been calling everyone saying you ruined his life. But honestly, Crystal, I think he did that on his own. He's broke. Ava's gone. He looks lost. I stared at the muted city skyline outside my window. The bridge lights steady, unwavering. I didn't ruin his life, I said quietly. I just stopped funding it. There was silence on the line then. A small, disbelieving laugh. You always were the calm one, huh? I guess calm finally paid off, I murmured. After we hung up, I sat for a long time watching the reflection of the river lights flicker on my window pane. Every decision I'd made had been cold, methodical, but somewhere under the precision I could feel something warmer beginning to flicker back to life. Not revenge, not joy, just peace. The burner phone buzzed one last time that night. One message, no voicemail, just a single text. You win. I hope you're happy. I read it once, then deleted it. I didn't win. There was never a game. He'd built a world on borrowed stability, and when the foundation withdrew, the structure collapsed exactly as physics said it would. I poured myself a glass of water, closed my laptop, and stepped out onto the small balcony. The night air was cool and clean. The hum of the city felt distant, harmless. Somewhere across town, the lights in that old apartment were gone for good. But here in this quiet little studio, everything worked perfectly. It had been almost 2 weeks since I left, and by then even the smallest noise from my burner phone carried a strange satisfaction. Every notification meant the system I once held together was still breaking cleanly, predictably, exactly as designed. That afternoon, I was at my tiny table reviewing a report for a new client. The air conditioner hummed faintly in the background, the rhythm of order. Then the phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. I pressed play. Crystal, you don't get it. You've destroyed everything. I can't get into the bank account. The landlord's suing me and Ava. His voice cracked mid-word. Ava's been arrested. There were drugs in her car. She says they weren't hers, but they found her name on the lease for the warehouse. I don't know what to do. I need your help. He sounded small, frightened, a man who had built his world on borrowed scaffolding and just realized it was collapsing. For a moment, I simply listened. The pauses between his words were longer, now heavy with disbelief. He had lived his life assuming someone would always stabilize it for him. Now he was learning what happens when gravity stops being kind. I replayed the message once, not for pleasure, but to study the tone. It wasn't anger anymore, it was confusion. The kind that comes when the world stops making sense to someone who's never had to hold it up themselves. I deleted the voicemail and turned back to my laptop. My new client was a startup led by 3 women, all of them my age, all balancing chaos and survival with grace. They'd hired me to manage their finances, my kind of calm. As I sorted their numbers, I realized something. I wasn't rebuilding from nothing. I was rebuilding from clarity. Later that night, Maya called again. Her voice came through softer this time, almost hesitant. Crystal, you might want to know what's happening. Liam's business went under. Investors pulled out. Something about unpaid taxes and missing receipts. His social media accounts are gone. And Ava, well, she's facing serious charges. Assault, possession, fraud. I leaned back in my chair. That's a full collection. Maya let out a low whistle. You're not even shocked, are you? No, I said. I just understand cause and effect. There was a pause. He's telling everyone you ruined him. He ruined himself. I just stopped sponsoring the illusion. Maya gave a small, rueful laugh. You're terrifyingly calm, Crystal. I was always calm, I said. He just never noticed until it wasn't serving him. We hung up soon after, but her words lingered. Terrifyingly calm. Maybe she was right. Maybe calm is terrifying to the people who thrive on chaos. That night I took a walk along the river. The air was sharp, laced with the scent of rain and wet stone. Couples strolled by, laughing, their reflections fractured in the water. I thought about Liam, about Ava, about the wreckage of their self-made empire. I didn't hate them. Hate requires energy, and I'd already given them enough of mine. As I stood watching the city lights shimmer, I realized something almost mathematical. I hadn't destroyed anything. I'd merely removed support. The system collapsed because it was unsustainable by design. The next day, I donated the burner phone to an electronics recycling bin. No ceremony, no goodbye. The experiment was over. For the first time in years, I slept through the night without waking to the phantom buzz of a message demanding attention, apology, or payment. When I woke, sunlight filled the room. The first thing I did was open the curtains wider. The second was make coffee strong black and mine. Later that week, I got an email from a former coworker. She'd heard from someone that Liam was staying at a friend's couch downtown, broke and humiliated. The universe had a sense of symmetry, it seemed. I read the message, closed it, and opened a blank document. At the top, I typed, Howard Consulting, Independent Financial Recovery Services. The irony didn't escape me. I used to save one man from his own bad decisions. Now, I'd make a living teaching others how to save themselves. That evening, as the city faded into dusk, I lit a single candle on my table. Its glow flickered against the walls, soft and steady. I thought about the night Liam had said I didn't make him feel alive. Fire, he'd said. Passion, but fire doesn't build, it only burns. And now everything he touched had turned to ash. I smiled faintly, not from triumph, but from understanding. He called himself the Alpha, but I was the architect, and I'd simply stopped building. Cliffhanger. It had been a month of silence when my new phone rang one evening. An unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Hello. The line crackled faint and distant. Then a voice raw and trembling. Crystal. It's me. For a moment, I didn't recognize the voice. It was hoarse, stripped of its usual swagger, like someone had drained all the color from it. Crystal, please don't hang up. I didn't. Part of me was curious, not out of affection, but out of study. Like observing a creature you once fed, now forced to find its own way in the wild. What do you need, Liam? My tone was calm level. There was the sound of traffic behind him, a car horn, the shuffling of restless footsteps. I made mistakes. Okay. I see that now. Everything's gone. The apartment, the accounts, Ava. She's in jail. And His breath hitched. I'm sleeping in my car. Crystal, I don't have anyone else. I leaned back in my chair, watching sunlight pool across my desk. My new office was simple but alive. Papers, neatly stacked coffee, half-finished, an open window, letting in the hum of real life. I'm sorry to hear that, I said quietly. Please, he whispered. I just need some help getting back on my feet. Alone, maybe. You always said you believed in giving people second chances. That was before I learned what they do with them, I replied. He fell silent for several seconds, the kind of silence that grows teeth. Crystal, I didn't mean to hurt you. I was stupid. You were right. You were the stable one, the smart one. You made me feel safe. Ava she made me feel alive, but that doesn't matter now. You were everything. His voice cracked. I get it now. I get what I lost. I closed my eyes, listening to his words wash over me like static. Once they would have pierced me back when I mistook his need for love. Now they just sounded like data, predictable output from a failed system. You always talked about dynamics, I said, my voice low, deliberate. Alpha, beta, passion, stability. You had a theory, remember? He hesitated. Yeah, but I was wrong. No, I said, you were right. You just misunderstood the hierarchy. He swallowed audibly. What are you talking about? You thought the foundation was submissive because it stayed quiet, I said, standing and walking toward the window. You thought stability meant weakness. But here's the truth. Liam, the foundation decides when the structure stands and when it falls. Crystal, please. The beta, I continued, doesn't depend on the alpha. The beta builds the system. And when the system is corrupted, the beta shuts it down. He made a broken sound, halfway between a sob and a laugh. You sound like a robot, like you don't even care. I looked out at the city, the river glinting in the distance, calm and inevitable. Caring is what kept the system alive longer than it should have been. Crystal, he said softly, you're really going to leave me like this after everything we had? Had implies there was something mutual, I said. There wasn't. There was only me holding up a fantasy you built on borrowed ground. The line went quiet. Then his voice returned lower now, bitter. You're heartless. No, I said, I'm finished. There was a click, not harsh, not triumphant, just final. I ended the call. For a long time, I didn't move. The room was silent, except for the faint whistle of wind through the window. On the desk, the phone lay face down, dark, inert, done. I picked up a small canvas resting on the floor. It was a painting I'd bought from a street artist a few days ago, a storm clearing over a mountain range, a thin line of sunlight breaking through. I hung it above the desk, stepping back to look at it properly. The colors were muted, imperfect, not the glossy palette Liam used to insist on for our apartment. It was real, raw, honest. As I looked at it, I realized something. I didn't hate him. Hate implies attachment, a line still connecting 2 points. What I felt now was clean disconnection. Somewhere out there, Liam was learning how to live without a safety net. And here, in this small, sunlit office, I was learning how to live without being one. I turned my phone back over. No new messages. I smiled faintly. System shutdown complete. 3 months later, my mornings began with sunlight and the smell of coffee. Not tension, not silence, heavy with someone else's moods. Just warmth. Real, breathable calm. My new apartment overlooked the park. The walls were white, the furniture minimal, the air alive with the hum of a world I built myself. There were no designer throw pillows, no performative clutter, no one rearranging things to match the aesthetic. Every object here had purpose. I'd registered my business 2 months ago, Howard Consulting. Clients came through referrals, word spreading quietly. I helped small startups, especially women-led ones, rebuild after financial manipulation, messy divorces, or business partners who drained them dry. Each story was different, but the pattern was always the same. Someone trusted too much, gave too long, carried too much weight until it broke them. I knew how to guide them out of that. I'd lived it. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the glass as I worked the same face, but sharper now. Not harder, just defined. I wasn't someone's safety net anymore. I was my own foundation. That afternoon, while reviewing invoices, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer, assuming it was a client inquiry. Crystal Howard speaking. There was a pause, not silence, but a low static like wind against a phone mic. Then a voice I hadn't heard since that call.
Liam.
Crystal, he said quietly. It's me. I didn't speak. He exhaled shakily. I'm not calling to ask for money or help. I just wanted to say I get it now. You were the only real thing in my life. Everything else, Ava, the business, it was smoke. Then I hope you've learned to breathe on your own, I said softly. He let out a hollow laugh. You don't forgive, do you?
I don't rewrite corrupted code, I replied. Crystal. Goodbye, Liam.
I ended the call before his sentence could finish. The sound was small, a clean click, the kind that closes a door completely, not angrily. For a few seconds I stood there, the phone still in my hand, staring out the window at the park below. A group of children were chasing each other through the grass, laughing free. The world kept moving forward without drama, without tragedy, just forward. I placed the phone face down on the table. It didn't buzz again. Later, as dusk settled, I brewed tea and sat by the window with my laptop. I opened a new document labeling it version 2.0.
Not for Liam, for me.
New goals, new boundaries, new code. The old version of me, the one who over-explained, over-gave, over-forgave, had been debugged out of existence. Outside, the city glowed like circuitry, each light steady, precise. I watched until the sky shifted from orange to indigo and whispered the final line of the story to myself. Not bitterly, not triumphantly, just true. He thought I was the beta, but the beta always controls the system, and I chose a clean shutdown. The screensaver dimmed, the tea cooled, and for the first time in years, everything ran exactly as it should. My name is Susan Smith, and I'm 32 years old. If loyalty were a person, I think it would look a lot like me, quiet, steady, and maybe a little naive. I used to believe that showing up for someone every single day was the purest form of love. I was wrong. I met Nelson 5 years ago at a friend's barbecue, the kind of lazy summer afternoon where everything smells like grilled corn and sunscreen. He was standing by the cooler laughing too loudly at his own joke. I remember thinking he looked like the type who'd never known silence. I was drawn to him instantly. Back then, I worked as a systems engineer at a mid-sized firm downtown. Long hours, lots of screens, very little excitement. Nelson, on the other hand, was a freelance graphic designer with an overflowing sketchbook and a dream of opening his own studio. Where I saw risk, he saw potential. That contrast, my stability against his chaos, felt intoxicating. From the beginning, I wanted to be his calm. He used to say I was the anchor he didn't know he needed, and I believed him. When his design agency folded during a market downturn, I covered the rent on our tiny apartment without a second thought. I paid for his online courses, introduced him to contacts from my office, even helped him pitch clients over takeout dinners that blurred into midnight. There were nights when I'd come home exhausted from debugging code all day, only to sit beside him and proofread proposals while he sketched logo drafts on napkins. He'd look up, grin, that crooked grin, and say, "What would I do without you, Elle?" I didn't correct him. I thought love meant being useful. When my company offered me a promotion that required relocation to Seattle, I turned it down. Nelson had just landed his first big client, and I didn't want to disrupt his momentum. "We're a team," I told him. He kissed my forehead and whispered, "You're my whole foundation." I took that as proof I'd done the right thing. But even then, small things started to shift. It began with his phone, how he'd tilt it slightly away when messages came in. Then the sudden interest in industry mixers that lasted late into the night. When I'd ask how they went, he'd smile absently. "Networking's everything, babe. You'd be bored." I tried not to overthink it. Nelson was naturally social, and I was not. So I busied myself with work, made plans for our future, started saving for a down payment. Even researched neighborhoods where we might buy our first home. One evening, as we were cooking together, he said out of nowhere, "You ever feel like life's too safe?" I laughed softly. "Safe sounds like a good thing." He shrugged, flipping a piece of chicken in the pan. "Yeah, but sometimes I want more. Something new, exciting." Something about the way he said it lodged itself in my chest. After dinner, he disappeared into his studio room to finish some concepts. I sat alone on the couch, half listening to the faint hum of his playlist through the door. It used to be comforting, the sound of his creativity. That night, it felt like distance. Over the next few weeks, he became increasingly restless. Our evenings turned into parallel routines, he in his corner, headphones on me, pretending not to notice the detachment. One Sunday morning, as I made coffee, I asked, "Hey, want to go hiking next weekend?" We haven't done anything outdoors in forever. He didn't even look up from his phone. Can't. There's this art event Maya invited me to. Maya. He smirked, finally glancing up. Just a creative director I met through a client. She's helping me expand my circle. Right, I said. Expanding. He caught the tone, but ignored it. You should be happy for me, Elle. You always say you want me to grow. I forced a smile, of course. Always. But the coffee that morning tasted like metal. That night, I lay awake, listening to the rain tapping against the window. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things, that Nelson was just chasing his professional dreams and nothing more. Still, the unease clung to me, heavy and shapeless. I didn't know it yet, but the foundation I thought I'd built so carefully was already starting to crack, and the person I trusted most was holding the hammer. The night everything changed was one of those evenings that look cozy from the outside but feel hollow when you're living inside them. Rain against the windows, a candle flickering on the counter, pasta bubbling on the stove. I'd made Nelson's favorite creamy mushroom linguine with white wine and garlic. A peace offering, though I couldn't say what war I was trying to end. He came home later than usual, smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't mine, something floral, expensive, and new. Long day, I asked, stirring the sauce to hide my unease. Yeah, he said, setting his phone face down on the table. You wouldn't believe how exhausting networking is. I smiled weakly, placed his plate in front of him, and waited for the sound of forks against porcelain to fill the silence. Instead, he leaned back, eyes steady on mine, measured, rehearsed. My stomach tightened. Susan, he began, voice, even we need to talk about us. I hate those words. They never mean good things. He set down his fork, clasped his hands together like he was about to present a proposal. I've been doing a lot of thinking about where we're going, about life, and I think we should open our relationship. I froze mid-breath. Open. As in... He smiled gently, as if softening the blow. As in, we give each other space to explore other connections. Nothing sneaky, no lies, just freedom. The room tilted slightly. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. Then came the twist. It would be one-sided for now. I know you. You're too loyal to want anyone else. That's part of what I love about you. Too loyal. The words sliced through me like thin glass. So you want to see other people, I said carefully, while I, what? Wait at home and keep things running. He tilted his head, considering. That sounds harsh when you say it like that. Think of it as balance. You're grounded. I'm restless. This might even make us stronger. I laughed, short and humorless. Stronger. That's one way to define breaking trust. Susan, come on, he said, leaning forward, tone dripping with false patience. This isn't about betrayal. It's about growth. You've always been too safe. Maya says. Maya, I interrupted, my voice sharper than intended. Right. The creative director. He didn't flinch. Yeah. She's been helping me see things differently. She makes me feel alive. You'd like her if you met her. That was when I understood. This conversation wasn't a suggestion, it was a confession dressed as philosophy. Why are you telling me this, I asked. Because I respect you, he said. I didn't want to hide it. I want transparency. Transparency. I repeated, my voice flat. So you can go sleep with someone else and still feel honest. He sighed like I was missing the point. You're making this sound ugly. I thought you'd understand. You're not like other women. You're rational, mature. You'll see that this is fair. Fair. My pulse thudded in my ears. For a long moment, I just sat there watching the candlelight tremble between us. The smell of garlic had turned acrid. My mind was a storm of memories, late nights, canceled promotions, quiet sacrifices, all the ways I'd built his comfort at the expense of my own. And then something inside me snapped into place. Not anger, not heartbreak, just clarity. If he was going to use my loyalty against me, I'd make it my weapon. I set my fork down, slowly looked him dead in the eye, and said, Fair enough. He blinked, surprised by how calm I sounded. That's it, I smiled faintly. You're right, Nelson. You should do what you need to do. For a second, confusion clouded his face. He was expecting tears, a fight, something to reassure him he still mattered. But I gave him nothing, just silence. He chuckled nervously. You're taking this well. Why wouldn't I said, standing to clear the plates. You've made up your mind. He reached for my hand, relief flashing across his eyes. See, this is why you're perfect, Elle. You get it. Most women would lose it. Most women, I said softly, would know better. That night he fell asleep easily, phone buzzing, quietly on the nightstand. I lay beside him, staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds between raindrops. I didn't cry. I didn't even move. I just let the silence swallow me whole. In the dark, I whispered the phrase again, tasting its bitter calm. Fair enough. It was the first time those words didn't mean surrender. It meant I was already gone. After that night, I stopped trying to understand Nelson. He'd built his own world, a small, glittering sphere of parties, rooftop drinks, and creative connections. I became the quiet figure in the background, the one who made sure the bills were paid and the Wi-Fi stayed connected so he could post photos of his new adventures. He thought my silence was permission. In truth, it was preparation. Weeks passed. He started coming home later, smelling like citrus and smoke. He'd talk about Maya casually, like she was an idea rather than a person. She challenges me, he'd say, pouring wine without offering me a glass. She says I've been living too comfortably. Then he'd glance at me with something like pity. You wouldn't get it, Susan. You like structure. He wasn't wrong. I did like structure. It made it easy to dismantle things quietly. I began planning the exit he never imagined I was capable of. During the day, I worked as usual, stable, dependable, invisible. At night, I went through every shared account, every subscription, every lease document. I made neat folders labeled essential and unnecessary. I set up mail forwarding to my friend's address in Portland. I spoke to HR about a temporary relocation request. When I packed, it wasn't in a rush, it was clinical. Passport, laptop, my grandmother's bracelet, everything else. The joint furniture, the decor I'd chosen, the matching mugs that read his and hers, I left untouched. They belonged to the version of me who believed he was my forever. One evening, as he scrolled through his phone, laughing at a message, I looked at him properly for the first time in weeks. He seemed smaller somehow, not physically, just reduced. Like the more he tried to look free, the more transparent he became. Heading to Maya's tonight, I asked my tone neutral. He smirked. Networking dinner. You know how it is. Of course, I said. Wouldn't want to hold you back. He didn't hear the weight behind the words. The night before I left, I made him dinner one last time. Not out of love, but ritual, the closing act of a play that had run too long. He barely noticed when I sat across from him eating in silence. He was too busy texting his thumb, flicking across the screen like a nervous tick. When he left the table, muttering something about catching up later, I washed the dishes slowly, methodically. I wanted the memory to be ordinary. No fights, no shouting, no tears, just the sound of water and plates, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint laughter from his phone in the next room. At midnight, while he slept, I logged into our shared account. I transferred half the savings to his name, not out of kindness, but closure. He'd always claimed fairness mattered. So I gave him fair. Then I canceled the streaming subscriptions, unsubscribed from grocery deliveries, and removed my name from the lease. By the time the sun began to rise, the only trace of me left in that apartment was the faint scent of lavender from the pillow. I placed my keys on the kitchen counter. On top of them, a note with 2 words, fair enough. At dawn, I wheeled my suitcase down the hall, each step strangely light. The world outside smelled of rain and asphalt, clean, sharp, new. The cab driver looked at me through the rearview mirror. Airport, yes, I said. One way. As the city blurred past the window, I realized I wasn't running away. I was simply walking out of a story that no longer deserved me. And for the first time in a long time, the silence didn't hurt. It felt like freedom. The first thing I noticed after leaving was the sound, or rather the absence of it. No clinking of Nelson's empty bottles on the counter, no low music bleeding from his studio, just the hum of the ocean outside my temporary apartment and the whisper of wind through an open window. I'd taken a short-term lease in Astoria, a coastal town a few states north where I'd once vacationed during college. My friend Nadia, a quiet soul who lived off freelance writing and herbal tea, offered me her spare room until I found my footing. Stay as long as you need, she said, handing me a mug of chamomile. You look like you've been holding your breath for years. She wasn't wrong. The first week felt surreal. I still woke up expecting to hear Nelson's alarm to see his shoes by the door, but the only footsteps were my own. The air was lighter, freer. For the first time in years, I wasn't somebody's emotional caretaker. I was just me. I worked remotely for my company, setting up my laptop by the window overlooking the bay. I hiked the cliffs in the mornings, wrote in my journal at night, and slowly the ache began to dull. Healing didn't come like sunlight, it came like the tide, slow and deliberate, washing away what didn't belong. By day 3, his messages started. Day 3, hey, how's the conference going? Miss you a little. Day 5, you've been quiet. Everything okay? Call me tonight. I didn't reply. I couldn't. Each message felt like someone knocking on a door I'd already bricked shut. A week later, the tone shifted. Day 10, I don't understand what's happening. You said fair enough, remember I thought we were okay. It made me laugh, a dry, humorless sound. Okay. He still thought it was an arrangement, that my leaving was part of some temporary experiment in freedom. By the second week, friends began reaching out. Not mine, his. Tom, an old mutual from his art circle, messaged me on Instagram. Hey, just a heads up, Nelson's been a wreck. Maya ditched him. Heard she hooked up with one of their clients and left him humiliated at some party. I read it once, maybe twice, then closed the app. There was no satisfaction in knowing he was suffering. Just confirmation that the storm had finally turned on the one who created it. His next message came late one night. Susan, please, I made a mistake. Maya's not who I thought she was. You were always there for me. I miss you. I didn't even open it fully, just deleted the notification and went back to reading. Each ignored message felt less like revenge and more like rebirth. Silence was my new language, and it spoke louder than any apology ever could. By the end of the month, he was unraveling. He called from blocked numbers, emailed me through our old shared calendar invites, even asked Caleb, his younger brother, to reach out. Caleb's message was short and sharp. He's miserable, Susan. He says you ghosted him. That's cruel. At least talk to him once. I stared at the words for a long moment before typing my response. Cruelty is staying somewhere you're unloved. Then I hit send, blocked the number, and went to bed. Each morning, I woke lighter. I stopped checking my phone compulsively. I started sleeping through the night. Nadia and I would sit on her porch after dinner, watching gulls trace lazy arcs over the sea. One night she asked, "Do you think he'll stop?" I smiled faintly. "When there's no echo left." She tilted her head. "And if he doesn't, then he'll just be talking to himself," I said. And with that, I realized something: I didn't need closure from him. The silence was the closure. The version of me that once needed his validation had been replaced by someone stronger, quieter, and far more dangerous to the kind of man who thrived on control. Freedom didn't look like a plane ticket or a new city. It looked like peace, still vast and deafening to anyone who'd mistaken my silence for weakness. It had been nearly 3 months since I left when the world finally tested my resolve. I'd started to rebuild something resembling a life, a rhythm. Mornings filled with salt air and tea afternoons, spent coding for clients who didn't know my history, evenings writing small reflections that would never be published. I'd even started smiling at strangers again. Then came Caleb's call. I almost didn't answer, but his name flashed on my screen, familiar and unwanted. Against my better judgment, I picked up. "Susan," he said, skipping any greeting. His tone carried that particular brand of family righteousness that always assumes the man's version of events must be the truth. "You've made your point. He's been drinking, barely sleeping. You could at least talk to him once." I stared out at the gray sea through the window. "Caleb, I made peace with this months ago. He made a mistake, okay? He knows that now. Good. Then he can learn from it," I said, my voice even. "You're seriously just going to leave him hanging, Caleb," I said softly. "Nelson didn't hang. He jumped. I just stepped aside." He went silent. I ended the call before he found a way to make me second-guess myself. A week later, the inevitable happened. A mutual friend invited me to a birthday party at a small restaurant downtown. I almost didn't go, but Nadia nudged me out of the house. "You've been hiding," she said. "You deserve a night where no one knows your story." But fate has a way of sitting uninvited at the same table. Nelson was there. I saw him the moment I walked in, thinner, paler eyes, rimmed red, like he hadn't slept properly in weeks. He looked like a ghost wearing my memories. For a heartbeat, I felt something flicker, not love, but recognition. He spotted me and froze mid-conversation. He approached, glass of whiskey trembling slightly in his hand. "Susan," he breathed, as though saying my name might break a curse. "Nelson." My voice came out steadier than I expected. He stared at me for a long time, scanning my face like he was searching for the woman who used to sit on the couch waiting for him to come home. "You look different," he said finally. I am, I replied. He gave a weak smile. I deserve that. The room around us buzzed with laughter and music, but we stood in this suspended bubble of quiet. I messed everything up, he said, voice breaking slightly. Maya was... Don't I cut in? You don't have to explain her to me. I just need you to know that it wasn't about her. It was about me being restless, I said. You told me that already. He nodded, shame heavy in his eyes. I thought freedom would make me feel alive. It just made me feel lost. I looked at him then, really looked, and saw not the man I'd loved, but the boy he'd always been chasing, thrills terrified of stillness. You wanted adventure, I said quietly. You found it. Susan, please, he whispered. Can we just start over? I almost pitied him. Almost. But behind me, I heard a warm voice. Susan, you made it. It was Leon, a landscape architect I'd met on one of my coastal hikes. Kind eyes, slow to speak, the opposite of everything Nelson had been. He walked over and greeted me with an easy smile, his hand brushing mine, small, natural, real. Nelson's expression shifted instantly, the color draining from his face. You're with him, he asked. Yes, I said simply. He doesn't need to open anything to know what he wants. For a moment, Nelson looked like he might cry. Then his features hardened pride, pulling at the edges. So that's it. You just erase people. I met his gaze. No, Nelson. I just stopped keeping space for the ones who never earned it. He swallowed, nodding faintly, eyes wet. You'll regret this. I almost smiled. You said that before. Turns out regret's your thing, not mine. Leon placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Everything okay? Yeah, I said. Just letting go of something heavy. Nelson turned away, then melting into the crowd, his silhouette swallowed by laughter that no longer included him. Later that night, as Leon and I walked along the pier, I finally understood the difference between peace and numbness. Numbness is silence that hurts. Peace is silence that heals. Nelson's voice might still echo somewhere in my past, but it no longer reached me. The tide had risen too high, and I had drifted too far. 6 months after I disappeared from Nelson's life, I moved into a sunlit apartment overlooking the sea. The kind of place I'd once imagined we'd share, except now it was mine alone. No mismatched furniture, no half-finished canvases littering the floor. Just quiet order and plants thriving on the balcony. I sat at my small desk one morning, the scent of salt and jasmine drifting through the open window, and realized something simple but profound. Peace isn't the absence of noise. It's the absence of needing to be understood by someone who never listened. My phone buzzed once, a new email. The subject line read, "One last thing." It was from Nelson. I didn't open it immediately. Instead, I made coffee, let the steam curl into the air, watched the waves roll in. When I finally clicked it open, it was shorter than I expected. I saw a photo of you on Leon's page. You look happy. I mean it. I'm sorry for everything. I didn't realize loyalty like yours was rare until I lost it. Take care, Susan. I read it twice, then archived it. Not out of anger, out of indifference. His words carried no weight anymore. They were echoes bouncing off walls I'd already torn down. That afternoon, Leon stopped by, with groceries and 2 takeaway coffees. He had paint smudges on his hands, his hair wind-tossed from a morning at a construction site. He smiled when he saw me typing at my desk. Working on that story again, he asked. Sort of, I said. More like a goodbye letter I'll never send. He kissed my temple lightly. Then maybe it's not for him. Maybe it's for you. I nodded. He was right. The story wasn't about Nelson anymore. It was about me, the woman who'd learned that silence can be strength that leaving isn't running, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. That evening, we walked along the beach. The sky was the color of fading gold, the tide brushing our ankles. Leon reached down, lacing his fingers with mine. You still think about him sometimes, he asked gently. Sometimes, I admitted, but not with pain, more like remembering an old dream, one I finally woke up from. He smiled. That's fair. I laughed quietly. Fair enough, I said the words that had once been a surrender, now a seal of peace. We stood there for a while, watching the last light vanish beneath the horizon. The water was cold, the wind sharp, but inside I felt warm, steady. In the distance, a seagull's cry echoed, fading into the dusk. I turned my face to the wind and whispered to the sea, not as a prayer, but as a truth. I used to love a man who mistook my loyalty for weakness. I left him and found myself. That's the story. And for the first time in years, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a beginning.